All
All right.
right. Welcome to the Domestic Draft Podcast. I'm Evan Bierman here with Dan Slowick. Dan, I see you looking at your beer there. I'm excited to get to our guests in a little bit here, but first I got to know what you're drinking.
It's a brewery called West Brew Brewery. It's out here in San Diego Vista, which is like North County, San Diego, and it's fairly new. They were established in 2020. It's a husband and wife that founded it. He's from the East Coast, served about 7 years in the Army, and then went into construction management. But his name is Josh Shear, and he actually comes from like a line of brewers. So both of his grandparents were brewers. And so this is kind of like a passion of his within his family. So they opened up in 2020 in Vista. They have a brewery there and a tap room. And then they also have one in Del Mar. And they also have one downtown, I think, in like Gaslamp District. But the beer I'm drinking, it's called Full Count IPA. It's got a picture of Petco Park there. So it's like a baseball, if that kind of wants to like set you up for like what kind of beer it is. Okay. It's a baseball game. You know, the sun's out. You're there watching. It's very easy. It's a good 6.7%. It's got a 3.8 on Untapped. There's a lot of berries hitting you right away. So it's like a little more of a fruity kind of citrus note as well. But it's just a pretty easy, very good, crushable IPA. And I like that a lot of their labels and a lot of their names are very straightforward. You know what it's for and why you're getting it, right? This is ballpark, full count, just one of those beers you want to have on a hot day watching the game, maybe bag of peanuts, you know? What about you? What are you drinking?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I've got Leinenkugels. It's actually, pretty popular brand. A lot of people know Leinenkugels. It's from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Similar story where it's, a family of brewers, generations of brewers, but this dates much further back. So in May of 1867, the Leinenkugel family was founded in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin by Jacob Leinenkugel. His father was actually an innkeeper and brewer himself. But Jacob was a family man driven by that iron work ethic of his father and that German family heritage. So he founds this brewery in the late 1800s. And today, the sixth generation family members are involved in the company. They're helping to bring some family recipes that Jacob actually poured his heart and soul into himself to consumers now. Chippewa Falls was once the site of the world's largest lumber mill all way back in the late 1800s. So a lot of lumberjacks and stuff would be the first patrons. But a lot of people know Leinenkugels for the summer shandy. That's won medals in the past. Actually, their dark lager is their most award-winning beer. I have neither of those. I have the red lager. It's 4.9%. It gets a 3.34 on Untapped. It's like got caramel flavors, a little bit of spice. It's got a blend of 5 different malts and hops. So they say it pairs well with Italian dishes like chicken parm, lasagna, or some hearty minestrone soup.
Leinenkugels with some chicken parm.
Leinenkugels with some chicken parm. It's got a good pairing. Okay. It's got a good pairing. All right. But I mentioned we had a guest on today, and I'm super excited. It's something a little bit different. I love when we do these episodes where we're not just talking sports, but we're talking about somebody else who's got a much more interesting career than you or I. It's Ben Carpenter. You can find him on Instagram at Ben Carpenter Photos. He actually just released 2 new books too, Oaxaca, A Year Among the Mountains, and OB, A Love Letter. Ben, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. I wish I could contribute more about sports, but beer, I can kind of.
Yeah. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking the most classic and oldest Mexican beer. It's Victoria. I do actually have some fun, nerdy beer facts about this particular brew.
Hit us with them. Yeah.
It's the oldest brew here in Mexico, and it was actually started during the kind of like a colonial era when there was actually a king put on the throne here from Austria.
Okay.
So
wow.
even to this day on the cans, I don't know if it's going to come legibly, but it says Tipo Vienna here on the can. So it's in the style of Vienna. So the oldest beer here was,
That's interesting. What the beer scene in Mexico, it's nothing like the United States, right? There's not a whole lot of breweries or a craft beer scene.
I mean, regionally where you're at, if you just pop over the border into Tijuana, there's a very rich tapestry of like craft beers.
Yeah.
Tijuana has an amazing craft scene. So if you ever want to pop that way, I can definitely set you up with some good breweries downtown. And then, it's just got a huge San Diego influence. So and a couple other places.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it just up there because it's right by San Diego, or is it becoming more popular in Mexico, in your opinion? Not that we need to talk beer the whole time, because we obviously won't, but I'm just curious in your experience.
It's definitely becoming more popular, especially among the bigger cities like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Querétaro, Monterrey. Like it's everywhere, and there's definitely a big passion for younger kids to get really into the craft beer scene. So in all the larger cities here, you can definitely find it.
Nice.
Cool. So let's get into it. The way I found you is just on Instagram, moving from Chicago to San Diego and then Ocean Beach specifically, and just kind of seeing your photos on social media being reshared and just like very saturated colors, very vivid imagery. And I'm just curious, what is your story of photography? Is this something that you were taught, you went to school for, or are you self-taught? Did you just pick it up? Do you have formal training? How did you get started taking pictures?
I'm pretty bullheaded. It's really hard to teach me anything I don't want to teach myself. So I played music for years. I taught myself. And then when it came to photography, it was kind of the same game. I think I fell into it the same way everyone does, where it's like we want to share memories. We want to share what we see around us. And for me, like hobbies become obsessions. And that's kind of like the route I went down with photography.
What do you have any like professional photographers maybe that have influenced your work? It seems like you have, very vivid style, as Dan said. I see, I love the Wes Anderson tie that you did with a few of the photos there and that little video that you did too, but not that he's specifically a photographer, but do you have any people that influenced your work?
Cinematography definitely plays a big role into it for sure. And then there's a couple other local photographers I'll plug. Like one of my best friends really pushed me to get into photography. He's from OB as well, a guy named by the name of Nick Betts. So I mean, it just started as me posting photos, and local photographers really like bought into what I was doing, and really put the wind in my sails to keep going. So that would say like the biggest influence, like, making me take that plunge to like give up my desk job to take photos like full time.
Would you say that is it more important to have an eye for what what you're capturing, or is it just as important to have great equipment?
No, I think equipment's probably on the lesser scale. I've seen photographers. I don't know if I can swear on this podcast or not.
Yeah, go for it.
I've seen shit photographers with like insane gear. That's more the norm than I think the other side. Because like living here in Mexico, the stuff I see kids with like old Canons and old Nikons, the work that they put out here because they have the passion for it, and I mean, the eye is one thing, but the eye is something you have to learn. Like it's a grind, like it's repetition every single day, going out, taking photos, and then over time, you begin to recognize like what is striking about a composition. And so I think repetition and work is way more important than the gear. Like I'm a gearhead too. Don't get me wrong. I'll talk you blue in the face about gear, but if you're shit at the like actually getting out there and getting into situations, it's just you could have a $20,000 camera. It won't make any difference.
What kind of gear do you use? Like, do you have anything that you swear by? Like, if somebody was just getting into photography, is there like a good camera that they should look for, or maybe a level? Yeah, like a different style.
I would see there's an old adage that I think rings really true, and it's like the best camera is the ones that you have with you. And so your iPhone, I mean, my God, like the iPhone 15s now, the amount of quality that you can get out of them. And if you're just practicing putting composition together, seeing what's interesting in your neighborhood and taking photos, even with that, then you can transition up in gear. But like, I don't think buying a $2,000 camera is immediately going to make you a better photographer. I think shooting is.
Yeah. And is a lot of it in like post as well, where you kind of like see what you got for the day, you throw it on your computer, and you're going through a program and you're doing like some edits and some, playing with the colors and the exposure and all that?
I got it pretty dialed in now. Like I have my, over time you develop your style and your color palette that you like for your photos. And that's what I've done. I will go and I'll try to keep it, around golden hours. So either you go super early in the morning when the sun's just coming up, or you go right before sun comes down. And then you have about 30 minutes on either side for like blue hour. So putting yourself in those time zones, or those times, really gives you the optimal photos, I think.
Yeah. Cause
like
evident.
like
yeah,
OB,
go ahead.
everyone who found me on OB is because every single damn day I would go out after work, I'd grab my camera and I'd just shoot
Beautiful
everything
sunset.
right around. Sunsets, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome place just to have as a playground to like become a photographer. It's a little different than like, you know, rural in the Midwest if you're in cornfields, maybe. I don't know. It could be the same. I don't know. Evan and I are both very like novice as well. Like I don't know, Evan, do you have a side passion on photography? I mean, we both kind of just use our cell phones as our primary camera. I think most people do, unless, you know, there's somebody who is pursuing a hobby or a passion. Are there like specific techniques or anything that like with a cell phone you would suggest? Because a lot of the people that listen to us as well are probably just like us, and like they want to take better photos. They don't want to be posting bad photos. What can you do with your phone? Or is it just, again, the time of day, the place where you are? Are you putting different effects or something on an iPhone or on a Galaxy or anything?
I don't post like almost anything you see on Instagram is almost never my iPhone unless it's like a video or like a quick like story or something. If you're talking specifically about like shooting with your phone, the things you can do to like make your photo a little bit more pop and a little bit more interesting is slow down and like think about what you're shooting at. Like everyone just does this.
Correct.
At that same like level, like get your phone upside down, get it on ground level, try to put in interesting compositions, and you're gonna have a better photo. Like there's some like basic rule of like a photography, like leading lines. You want to find a situation where maybe a street's leading somewhere and it's drawing the eye into the photo, or
that's the kind of
like,
stuff I'm looking for. Like, talk to us, because we're like, this is the photography for dummies. These lines and everything you're talking about. Explain that.
Yeah, so leading lines is a big one to draw. Like you want to see where there's like either a street or there's lights or something that's drawing towards a subject, and something like that will naturally draw someone in. I would say start with things like that, compositional. Like find a subject that's interesting, rather than just go to like say the pier. You just there's a billion photos of the pier. What that day could you find interesting? Like stop, stand in an area and wait for like a weird. We got plenty of weird characters in OB. Like a lot of times I would first find like the scene that I liked, and I would just stand there for 5 minutes until someone interesting came into the scene.
Patience.
And then I would take patience is a big one. It's kind of like fishing, I guess.
Yeah, I get that.
You're not always going to catch something, but if you go out and you do it for the pure joy of just being out there at sunset and snapping away, like you're more relaxed and you're probably going to catch something.
Do you have a lot of days where you go out? I mean, I'm sure not at this point, but maybe in the past, do you have a lot of days you go out to shoot and maybe you take a bunch of photos and you come back and you're like, you know what, none of these were it. Like, I'm not going to do anything with these photos, or I'm just going to burn these or whatever. Or at this point, I'm sure you're pretty dialed in. Like you said, you know what times to go out and things like that. But was there a point in your photography career that you were just like, oh, these just, it's just not happening today with some of these?
No, that still happens all the freaking time. Like,
Okay.
I feel if anything, it's maybe gotten worse. Like I've definitely, I think, become more self-critical of my work. Whereas like, I want it to be the best photo ever. And if it's not, I'm not going to post it on my timeline. I use those ones more like the documenting, like this is what I did today. That's like story throwaways. Like I'll post those photos on my story because they'll disappear in 24 hours. But the work I want to showcase, I've become so much less. I used to post like I'm like a couple times a week, like a post, and now it's like maybe a couple times a month at best.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. What about, all your work as a photographer, what is your favorite and why? And I know you just put out 2 books. So maybe that's the answer. And you can tell us more about those too. But do you have like a favorite work that you've done?
It's gotten so great this past year. Like beforehand, I was doing photography on the side, like selling some prints, and I never tried to do the wedding route or anything like that. But this last year, I've been working with like mezcal brands. I know that this is
Tell us more.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So one of my main people I work with right now is a company called Oaxaca Mezcal, like the state, but spelled with a W. And so I get to go to their palenques where they make the mezcal. I get to shoot all those events. I get to go on their tours and go these like bar takeovers that they do. And that is just such fun work. Like it's rewarding too, because I just get these amazing shots around Oaxaca. And it's crazy that my job is to take pictures of like cultural stuff around here in Mexico. Like that's been such a highlight this last
That's
year.
awesome.
Sounds delicious. Yeah, I was in Mexico City, well, gosh, 4 years ago now, and the mezcal there is delicious, but also the people and the culture and like the food, the cuisine, everything. And I know most of your work now is focused in Mexico, and I'm just curious, what drew you to the country, and what do you like showcasing more? Is it the scenery or the people?
Oh boy, I mean, is this like a 10-hour podcast? Because that's about how much I can talk about Mexico. I've always come down here. I mean, I'm a California kid. I grew up in Northern California. I grew up with a lot of Mexicans. Mexicans are in my family. Like, I have a sister who's adopted, who's Mexican. I went to high school, so it's always a weird question. People are like, why Mexico? Like, Mexico's always been a part of my life. Like, my Spanish
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
perfect, but I've always spoke it. And then I used to work down here a lot when I lived in San Francisco, working for software companies. And then I moved to San Diego. And then COVID. I mean, I think
Mhm.
COVID was a catalyst for a lot of people where I said, I don't want to do the work I'm doing anymore. And I don't want to live in the country I'm living anymore. Um, so COVID happened literally the day they announced bar closures in San Diego. Me and my roommate got and we were at a bar. We were at Pack Shores out there in OB, and we got drunk
Okay.
and we jokingly bought tickets to Oaxaca for the next day because they had just
Mhm.
announced they were closing bars. And we woke up the next day and I said, "Dude, are we doing this?" And we did, and that was 4 years ago. So it's supposed to be 2 weeks. So 2 week vacation turned to 4 years. A lot less, a lot quicker than I care to admit. So yeah, COVID. The shortest answer is COVID drove me down here, and I've been back to San Diego like sparingly back and forth, but I just find myself in my most creative, my happiest point, like down here.
Mm.
Um,
Nice.
and then you ask, like, is the scenery or the people like the
Yeah.
more drawing factor here in Mexico? Definitely the people. Like, I'm not a landscape photographer. Like, if you're looking for the best landscape photographer, I'm probably not it.
Mhm.
That's like a level of patience and dedication that I to sit on a mountain cold as hell, like waiting for something like at 4 in the morning every day. I just can't do it. Can I walk around sunset in my city? For sure.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what I enjoy about it. It's like you kind of get to travel to the places you're living through your phone, but it also kind of is a nice nudge to get out and being down here in San Diego, it's like it's just right there. Get out and go explore a little bit more. Yeah, and not a question, but just yeah. I every time I go down to Mexico as well, me and my wife, like we've had a great time. Been to Valle, TJ, Mexico City, went to La Paz last spring as well. Yeah. So what do you say to people like in the States that are very like, because we both grew up in Chicago and people are apprehensive to go to Chicago because there's a lot of headlines with crime. What do you say to people? And even my wife was saying, some of her coworkers were saying they're apprehensive to go to Mexico because some of the headlines they see. Like, what is the advice of people traveling there? And then what would you say to the people that are apprehensive?
Yeah, I would first say like, what are you apprehensive about? And if it's typically the response you get is like the cartel stuff.
Yeah.
And the reality is as a backpacker, as a tourist here, the cartels don't want to touch me with the 10-foot pole. It's
Mm.
like complete drama, it's complete stress, and the likelihood of something like that happening to you is pretty slim to none. Um, I never tell people to throw caution in the wind when you're down here. It's like anywhere else, like Chicago. Like, don't be an idiot. Don't be drunk in the streets at 4 in the morning and expect nothing to happen.
Right.
But I've certainly put myself in stupid situations and come out on the other end just fine. Like, I speak a little bit of Spanish. I'm always respectful to the people who want to come down here. Like, the reputation Mexicans get, just like people in Chicago, I think is pretty undue, pretty
Mm.
unfair. I mean, if you're in the center of Chicago, like, what are you stressing about? If you're downtown, it's pretty darn safe.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not poking my head around every neighborhood in every city. Sometimes I do, but at large, Mexico is a lot safer than people think it is. And I've done it in the worst situation. I mean, I'm walking around with essentially like almost 10 grand in camera equipment sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've never so much as had like a major issue living down here and coming here for like 15 years.
And you're going out, with a plan usually, right? Like a spot that you're going to go to or an event. No, you're kind of just taking your camera and going.
Well, when it's a mezcal event, when it's like paid like client work,
Yeah.
of course. When it's like passion stuff, like I just want to walk around, take photos.
Yeah.
If I'm in a new city or in a new town, I just literally just maybe I'll look at a map for 2 seconds, find some points of interest, and then I'll walk around.
Oh, wow.
I'll walk
Yeah,
around. I'll pop into a dive bar, into a cantina. I'll get some food. I'll take photos, talk to people, and that's pretty much it.
yeah, that's awesome. It's so,
Do you
so
get
natural. Yeah, it shows in the photos too. But I just figured somebody who's been doing it as long as you have been, maybe you have certain things that you're going to or looking for, when you set out. But that's awesome to hear that it's very natural like that.
Have you ever had anybody like push back when you take your camera out and refuse, kind of like, what are you doing? You're invading my privacy, or we don't like photographers around here?
Way more on that side of the border.
Really?
Way more. Yeah, like God, I remember. I try to, don't be evil, kind of the old Google like mantra. Like when I go out and take photos, I'm not trying to make anyone look like an idiot or anyone to look silly. Like I'm trying to be respectful of the place where I'm at and just showcase it and like the reality. And in San Diego, I remember one time and I was taking a photo of someone's fucking dog. And the guy's like, hey, you're taking pictures around OB and showing us having fun during COVID. This is like right at the height of like, I think it was like 2021.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I live in this neighborhood and I walk around every day and I take photos. Like I took a photo of a dog. Like how am I showcasing that we threw caution to the wind about COVID? And then I'd have some people be like, hey, you have my permission to take photos in this area. And and it's such a hard thing to tiptoe on because it's the same laws here as it is in the US, which is that there is a separation between privacy and public. Like you don't have an expectation of privacy in public or vice versa. Like,
right.
But in a flash second, like people's emotions can run high. So if someone says no, I just go, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Here, that doesn't happen. I mean, last week I was in Michoacan, which is like one of the more cartel-y, like dangerous states here, and there's a protest. And I went to the police and I asked them, like, hey, can I take photos of this protest? I don't want to get beat up by a baton or something.
Yeah.
The police literally posed for me.
Really?
Yeah, it's not the first time either. Like, and here
ask
you
to send them some copies afterwards.
Yeah, I've had that happen before many times, which is funny. Because here, like when I like protests are fun, but obviously there's a danger element to it. But
yeah,
and here is an extra danger element as a foreigner because I'm here on a resident visa or not visa, resident status. And as a resident here, I'm not allowed to. As a non-citizen, I can't participate in protests. So if you
can observe it and
I can observe
photograph it.
So I'm usually proactive and tell the police, hey, I'm here taking photos. I'm not here participating. So don't deport me, please.
Do you have a favorite city in Mexico that that might be like a secret because people might be looking for their next trip to go and enjoy a cultural experience. I'm speaking for myself. And it's just a beautiful city, vibrant. People they don't talk about it a lot, and people are missing out on it.
Yeah, I mean, God, you living in San Diego, you have such a benefit.
It's so nice. You just go over fly out of TJ. You can go all over. Yeah, it's great.
And so that pretty much puts every single city for San Diegans in Mexico at your fingertips because everywhere here flies to Tijuana. So like, I think for everyone, like this is going to scratch everyone's back, would be a city like I live Guanajuato. And
never heard of
that's perfect. So Guanajuato is in a region here called the Bajío, which is just north of Mexico City. So maybe you've heard of San Miguel de Allende. That's kind of like a more popular one. It's from the same state. So the state's called Guanajuato. The main capital is Guanajuato. And the famous one that a lot of people go to is San Miguel. Very Disneyland, Mexico. Guanajuato is cool. It's just got such a vibe. It's very colorful. It's in this bowl with like tons of like different colored buildings and statues and legends. And it's a college town, so people go out and party and drink and have a good time. And there's even mummies there, if you can believe it, like mummies, like Egyptian style
Wow.
mummies.
Really?
There's a museum there where you can see like, yeah, mummified people, which is pretty creepy. So,
Wow.
and then at night they have
Yeah.
these guys that work for the college that do these singing tours where they'll literally take you around the city, teaching you about the different legends. And everyone's just cranking tequila and beers, and it's Guanajuato is a really good time.
Just a good time. Yeah. It sounds like just an
Yeah.
overall good time.
So I want to talk about the two books that you just put out. You put them out at the same time, I believe, too. I mean, what's it like putting out, one book, let alone two? One, Oaxaca, A Year Among the Mountains, and OB, A Love Letter. So, on both sides of the border there. But tell us about those books and what it took to, get those out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it took a wealth of time of photographing and putting stuff together. Like OB, a couple of years living there and shooting photos and putting those together for the ones I like the best. Oaxaca, I probably shot maybe 1 million photos, and like narrowing that down to even 100 pages of photos was pretty nuts. So
Yeah.
these are things I've been like kicking down the road for years, and I've just been kind of timidly not pursuing it to the full extent I should. And then this last year, right before Christmas, I said, screw it, I'm just going to do both. I'm just going to sit down, force myself. And bear in mind, I don't have a publisher. I've never made a book, like a photo book, ever in my life. And so I had to figure everything out from scratch, like how to make, compose everything, put the books together, how to get it self-published.
Yeah, that's
it was
a huge task.
Yeah. And I was really happy with the end result. And I somehow managed to get them out before Christmas. Like I'm so last minute type of person. Like, so I had to set a deadline and push it right up into it to get it done, I think.
Love that. And if you're looking to buy that, just go on Amazon. You could search it up. You can search up Ben Carpenter, find his book, A Year Among the Mountains, Oaxaca, and OB, A Love Letter. Are you planning on going anywhere next and kind of just, immersing yourself in that country and within the people and kind of, jetting over from Mexico somewhere else and just kind of starting your next project?
It's a sensitive subject. I was supposed to be out of Mexico this last winter.
Okay.
I have family over in Israel, and I was supposed to go to Israel in December. Then obviously, everything that kicked off on October kind of put a big. And I was supposed to go to Yemen too. There's like an island off of Yemen I really wanted to photograph, and Yemen and Israel got like thrown off the table right away, all at once. So, outside of that, I don't know. I think Mexico is just not ready to let me go. Like every time I've tried to leave, and I think even if I do leave, like I'm just going to keep this as a home base moving forward.
Yeah.
Like I've been to every state here, pretty much every city, and I'm still not bored yet. Every single month, week, I find something new and interesting. I mean, Mexico's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a country I could photograph the rest of my life, and I don't think I'd run out of things to see or say.
What's your mode of transportation? Just curious. Are you doing? Are you renting? You have a car? Are you doing? Is there public transportation from state to state? Are you flying?
I try to avoid flying as much as possible and try to get everything like via bus. So bus is the usual mode of transportation, not just for me, but for most Mexicans.
Okay.
Because here it's the bus stations are almost treated like airports. And the buses are like way more cushy than an airport or than a plane. Like the buses here, like recline all the way. They got TVs. Like it's super cozy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So last question before we get you out of here. I really appreciate your time today, Ben. But what are your plans or goals for the upcoming, this year now we're in February, are you working on something specifically this year or have big plans for the rest of the year?
Yeah. I'm partnering with some other friends in San Diego. The photographer I mentioned earlier, Nick Betts, we're looking at transition more into doing more film stuff down here to start to document via documentaries, some stories around here. The one that we have passing around, we're still waiting to get some funding behind it and get it into the green, is a documentary about Oaxaca's psychedelics.
Okay.
So mushrooms are
Immerse
originally from
yourself.
Oaxaca.
Yeah.
Yeah, mushroom, and I'm not propositioning everyone to do mushrooms, but it's a really crazy story, and I'm excited to tell the story of this community, of this village, of this specific lady who is attributed with kind of the
She's like a
creation
shaman or
of
something.
yeah, she was a shaman from a little like village in Oaxaca called Huatla de Jimenez, and the story is crazier than fiction. Like essentially, this guy with the last name Wasson came down here via the CIA funding to research these mind-altering drugs, and he ended up in this village meeting this lady. And now that mushrooms that they synthesize now, psilocybin is like $1 billion industry, and this community got nothing.
Huh.
And then the poor lady got mistreated the rest of her life. And so I think it's like I think it's just an important story to tell.
Story that needs to be told. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So that's the next one, is more filmmaking. I
Documentary.
love photography. It's never going to go away, but I think it's just the next obvious step is to make more films. Or make
There you
films
go.
in
Love
general.
Get your Wes Anderson on. I like it.
Yeah.
That is our guest today. His name is Ben Carpenter. You can find him on Instagram at Ben Carpenter Photos. Go ahead and buy some of his books. He's got 2 books on Amazon. One is Oaxaca, A Year Among the Mountains. The other is OB, Ocean Beach, A Love Letter. Ben, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
Yeah. Appreciate your time. And just for the books, it's probably way easier. Right on my Instagram, there's links. And then on my website too, which is Ben Carpenter's Photos. Sometimes Amazon, you have to poke around a little.
Appreciate it. Thanks
a lot,
for being here.
All right. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thanks again to our guest, Ben Carpenter. Again, you can find him on Instagram at Ben Carpenter Photos. Check out his 2 new books. They're on Amazon, or you can check them out at the links in his Instagram as well. Oaxaca, A Year Among the Mountains, and OB, A Love Letter. Dan, it's Super Bowl week.
Yep.
It's the final week of the season. We got the Chiefs and we got the 49ers. Who are you taking?
I'm seeing a lot just walking around here. A lot of 49er flags are out. A lot of California pride. A lot of 49er flags. Who am I taking? If I am betting my own money, I am taking the Chiefs. If I am rooting, I am rooting for the 49ers. So that doesn't really answer your question. I think while watching the game as a fan, I want the 49ers because they're, the underdog, I would say. Something different. Yeah, change it up a little bit. See if it could be done. But it's also, it always comes back to the Chicago Bears. It's a good argument to look at and a good, experiment of one team has the cream of the crop at quarterback. The other team has a very good team all around, and the quarterback is kind of just a plug and play. Both got to the Super Bowl, which is the goal. And now we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Who do you got?
So to that point, I think the 49ers, it's not just like it's a good team and the quarterback's mediocre. Like that team is loaded everywhere else. The coach is a stud, has been doing this a long time, comes from a big family tree of coaches, like knows what he's doing type of stuff, right? I would not say Matt Eberflus is that guy, right? John Lynch has proven to be extraordinary as GM. The running back, McCaffrey, best in the league. The wide receivers, Debo, Ayuk, like everything's
you don't
right.
Have
it's not just
Patrick Mahomes, and that's really all that matters.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, as a point to like comparing the 49ers to the Bears ever being that, I don't know that anyone else could be that, where they could just find a quarterback that's like just good enough. I don't think there's a lot of instances where that works. I do think the 49ers have figured that out, right? And I think it was Cam Newton that said Brock Purdy's probably the 10th best player on the team.
Yeah.
Probably is, he probably is. But I mean, I think he's good enough that he can get it done. With that said, I do think Mahomes is going to win again.
Yeah.
I saw, all the 49ers fans coming out to boo him during some of those, the media days over the last couple of days, and the boos were raining down on him and Kelsey and some of the other Chiefs players. I think that type of stuff just motivates Mahomes even more. And that guy is just nuts. He's just so good. So I think,
and experience, right? It's the motivation of just being a crazy competitor, and also the experience of having done it before, knowing what to expect, knowing how this week's going to go, right? Like he's like, okay, we got the media, we'll do game planning. start prepping and everything. Like he knows what to expect. And where on the other side, I mean, they were here what, four years ago, but a lot of new talent,
2019.
new talent on the roster, and not as much experience of having kind of gone through this. But two kind of recent blue bloods in the NFL. I think beginning of the season, these were kind of the two teams that a lot of people were saying might make it to the Super Bowl. So it's always interesting to see that there isn't a lot of, I mean, I think the Lions were the surprise, but when it comes down to the Super Bowl, I think by preseason, most people know what top 6 teams that are likely to make it. And these were probably 2 of them.
Yeah. I think the Ravens were up there too. A lot of people were saying at the beginning of the season, the Bills, certainly have, done it. And they played pretty well against the Chiefs too. But yeah, I think Mahomes he's just too good now. And I do have quite a few fast facts I'll hit you with about this Super Bowl.
Okay.
So this is the first time the NFL, they've hosted a Pro Bowl and an NFL draft in Vegas before, but it's the first time that the Super Bowl is being held there. And so the NFL is very strict about gambling, and specifically gambling on an NFL game if you're an NFL player. So, both teams are staying about 45 minutes outside of the city just to avoid any kind of, temptation for any of the players. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We're talking about Mahomes. If he wins, he's going to join Tom Brady, Terry Bradshaw, Joe Montana, and Troy Aikman as the only quarterbacks to win the Lombardi Trophy 3 times.
At least,
of course, Tom Brady has 7. So, he's got a long way to go before he's there. But Mahomes is only 29. So he's got a long time, I think, that he's going to be playing still. But still, if he wins this one, it's 3. He's still 4 behind Brady. So it's just crazy to look back at Tom Brady's career too. Now, 19 years after Andy Reid's Super Bowl debut, Reid's making his 5th Super Bowl appearance. He's going for his 3rd Super Bowl win in 5 seasons and 2nd in a row. But if you think back before he got Mahomes, there was always this idea that Andy Reid could get him to the big game, but they could never win.
Yeah, especially in Philly. Donovan McNabb,
and that's why he
Terrell
ended up,
Owens.
Yeah, moving over, I think he was out of the league for a year or so, and then he went over to the Chiefs. And so now you look at him and you're like, wow, this guy, always had it. He just needed Patrick Mahomes, I guess. Now it's the 49ers' first trip back to the Super Bowl since 2019. They lost to the Chiefs back then, right? They were winning 20-10 midway through the 4th quarter. Famously, Chiefs went on a 21-0 run to steal that game, 31-20. I mean, you just look at the score, you're like, oh, the Chiefs beat them. Mm-hmm. But if you remember back to that game, the 49ers had it. So it is going to be a good game, I think, either way. It's that's one of Kyle Shanahan's epic 2 Super Bowl losses, right? They lost that game to the Chiefs, but then he was also part of the Atlanta loss to Tom Brady back when they were up 28-3. I think at the half, he was offensive coordinator for that team. So Shanahan's looking to get his first win, and that would make him and his dad the first father-son tandem to win Super Bowls as head coaches. So that's something to look for. And then, speaking of father-son duos, Christian McCaffrey's dad has won some Super Bowls in his past.
Broncos?
Yeah, he was a receiver for the 49ers in 1994. They won. And then he followed Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan's dad, over to Denver, where he won 2 more Super Bowls. So that McCaffrey-Shanahan thing is strong. And I think, you got to pull for Christian and Kyle Shanahan to get their first Super Bowl victories. So those are some storylines to watch for sure in this game. I think it's going to be a really fun game.
I mean, it's the Super Bowl. It's a holiday in the United States. I don't know why it's not a holiday. Everyone looks forward to it. Even if you're not a football fan, somebody within reach is watching the game and you're getting invited to a party, And that's kind of where I want to just really quick before we go, Super Bowl party, Super Bowl hangout. Are you watching the commercials? Are you doing squares? Are you making kind of bets on how long the national anthem goes? And then what's the appetizers you got going on? Are you doing little smokies? You got some nachos? Just doing chips and dip? What's your ideal Super Bowl? What are you doing?
That's a great question, because I was just texting some of the people that are coming over to our place on Sunday. Just what do you guys want to eat? The big one that comes back, the first thing everybody says is wings.
Here we go.
You got to have wings.
Got to have wings.
You got to have the wings. Just some other appetizers. I think we're going to put out some, little like
Little buffalo
jalapenos
chicken dip.
filled with cream cheese and wrapped in bacon. I'm going to throw some of those in there. Just stuff like that. You got to have that kind of stuff. Buffalo chicken dip is a big crowd pleaser. So I'd throw
You gotta have the chips
some
on
kind of
deck.
dip. You got to have the chips
Some kind
on
of
deck.
dip, chips everywhere. Some to just kind of snack at as the game's going on.
Yeah. And then maybe something a little more substantial, some pizza or something
some
like
pizza.
that too.
That's always the good. Yeah. So we're gonna
Yeah.
get pizza probably. The wings is gonna be hard out here because there's not a lot of wing spots. It's not a West Coast type of food. Maybe we'll just do pizzas and have a bunch of, I don't know, charcuterie boards, some meat and cheese to pick at, some chips. My biggest things I love with the Super Bowl that just kind of brings me back is just a little Smokies. Give me a little Smokies in a little Tupperware, like that glass container or whatever, not Tupperware, ramekin or something. I don't know. Put some barbecue sauce on it, get it baked, and some toothpicks on the side. You're good to go.
Yeah, there you go. We got you all prepped for Sunday Super Bowl.
It's gonna be a fun one.
Take Monday off if you got the time off. All right. Thanks again to our guest, Ben Carpenter, for joining us today for Dan Slowick. I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com. And you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening. Cheers.
Cheers.